So you want to host a virtual conference and you want to do it profitably. Well, I can help. I have a lot of experience with this and I'm really excited to share with you some of the things you can do to make your live events profitable and fun. Live events are awesome. I love gathering with people, connecting with people, being live in person. So yes, live events are amazing. They're also expensive, and there are a lot of risks associated with a live event because you're investing a lot of money on a venue, on food, and on other things. So it's great to do live events, but it's also great to do virtual events. And a lot of people now are talking more and more about virtual events with the situation with COVID-19. There's a lot of interest now in not only creating virtual events, but attending them. I recently had the privilege and the pleasure of hosting my very first 3-day retreat virtually. And guess what? It was a game changer. I was not looking forward to taking my 3-day retreat that I've been doing for 6 years and turning it into a Zoom meeting. I thought that I would struggle to keep people's attention. I thought that people would be not engaged. I thought that people would cancel. But guess what? None of those things happened. It was awesome. And so I want to share with you some of the things that you can do as you're putting together your virtual conference. So the first thing that you want to think about is, what is your vision for this experience? A vision is a very broad term, and it applies to a whole bunch of things that you can do as you're developing your virtual conference. But essentially, we start with, what is the outcome that you want to create, and for whom? Who are the people that you want to serve in this virtual experience? Do you want to have a small and intimate conference, or do you want to have a huge conference? Are you going to let your audience members be a part of the experience as a participant, or are you going to keep them more as an audience? So these are all things that you can think about that will impact how you structure your event. For example, if you're using Zoom to run your meeting, right, you can have a conference on Zoom that is a webinar style meeting, which means that your participants are not participating. They're not on camera. They can listen, they can type in the chat, but they're not necessarily like sitting at the table with you. But there's another way to do it if you do a Zoom meeting where all of the people who attend can have their video turn on and can be seen. So the vision of, how do you want this event to look and feel? Do you want it to be very much like passive audience, people just witnessing and observing and receiving, or do you want them to be active participants in the experience? Another thing to think about as you do a virtual conference is, where are your people? This is something I forgot to think about as I took my event virtual. I forgot to pay attention to the fact that we had 6 different time zones, and that there were going to be people that were starting the event at 2 in the afternoon in England and ending at midnight, and then people on the West Coast who were starting at 6 in the morning and ending at 4 in the evening. So think about where your audience is and what's the time zone that's appropriate for your conference. Another thing you want to think about is, do you want to do a teleconference or a telesummit, or do you want to do an actual virtual conference? One of my friends, Leanne, she's also a client, is an expert in creating something called a virtual telesummit, which is where, instead of having a 2 or 3 day back-to-back meeting where everybody's on for 2 or 3 days, she creates a longer term production where she's got interviews being released every day for 10 or 12 or 14 days. And so people can watch at their leisure. They watch a recorded playback of the interview, as opposed to doing a live virtual conference, which is, I think, personally very exciting and very fun, but also a lot more stressful and requires a lot more production savvy. So you might want to think about also doing a telesummit or a teleconference to start, and then leading into something a little bit more production heavy. Now, another thing to consider is, unlike in a live event where you have limited seating and every single person that you add probably costs you a lot in food or venue expenses, when you're virtual, you can have a much bigger audience without having to pay a whole lot more money. So think about, what's the size of the audience that you're looking for? How many people do you want in your experience? Now, personally, I just did a 3-day virtual retreat, and it was fairly small. And that meant that it was pretty easy to keep people engaged. I mean, I could see every single person who was attending on one screen. That would have felt really different if we'd had 100 or 200 or 300 people on there. So the number of people and your vision for the event is going to impact the technology, the structure, the format, etc. Now, another thing to think about that's really important is, what are your monetization strategies? I promised you that in this video, I was going to share with you how to make your event profitable. Well, one of the biggest things that I see people do wrong is they get so caught up in making this event experience amazing, they forget that they need to have monetization strategies, aka what I like to call an offer for the big back end. What is the experience? What is the outcome that you're going to deliver at your virtual conference that opens the door into what's next? Now, even if you have a conference with a whole bunch of different speakers, you can still make some sort of offer. You can still create community. You can create a subscription or a membership, or even just sell next year's conference or next quarter's conference, right? But just making sure that you're always leading into what's next. Finally, something really important to think about as you create your virtual conference is having support. Having support is fundamental. If you are going to be the person who's emceeing and hosting and curating the event, and then you're also the person who's administrating the production side, that's too much. That's going to be you're cruising for a bruising, as my dad would say. So make sure that you have some support people in place to help you as you manage the production side of this event. If you like the idea of doing virtual events and conferences, but especially if you like the idea of doing a virtual retreat like the ones that I do, check out my retreats playlist. It'll be exactly what you need to learn how to monetize, fill, and deliver your awesome retreat.